How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Robinson Handy and Technology Services channel. And if you're watching on Facebook, welcome to the Facebook page. Today, I'm going to be answering a question that I saw on Facebook. This question is regards to getting a tree cut, and I'm going to give my handyman opinion of the topic at hand. Let's get started. All right, so we'll go ahead and jump right into the question. It says, I'm in a dispute with this tree guy. He left a 4-foot high and 1.5 foot stumps and insisted that's the lowest that he could cut. 25 years of experience. What do you think? Any tree removals here in this group? I'm in Hudson Valley, New York. Now, when it comes to this question, okay, you can't cut a tree all the way to the ground, depending on the circumstance. This poster also attached photos of the tree stumps. So here is what I assume is the 4-foot stump. And so in my opinion, and there are other angles of, I'll go through those really quickly. So when you use a chainsaw, or even if you're using a pole saw, one thing that you learn is that chainsaws and pole saws are not designed to cut metal, like under no circumstances. If you hit metal with your chainsaw or your pole saw, a number of things could happen. One, the chain could actually hook into that metal, and with the force that a chainsaw can create or a pole saw, it could actually pull you into whatever it hooks into. The chainsaw or pole saw, if you hit metal, the chain on it itself could break. And if it breaks, then it becomes a projectile risk. And depending on, who is around you, that chain could hit you. It could hit somebody else. That's a bad case scenario. And so what you'll learn as a handyman, I've cut a number of limbs. I've never cut down, I've cut down a couple of trees. They were smaller trees. But one thing you always want to do is you avoid cutting metal, especially metal like this. So as you see, this piece of metal, it appears to be into the ground here. Assuming that's asphalt from the way it looks. But not only is it in the asphalt on this side, it's on the asphalt on this side. And if you see down here towards the bottom, it's actually touching the tree all the way up on this side of the tree. There's no way anybody who knows how to properly operate a chainsaw would be willing to cut this close to metal, because as you can see, more likely that metal is not deformed in that tree. That tree has grown around that piece of metal. And so because it has grown around that piece of metal, that means in order to cut the entire tree, you're going to have to hit that metal. And it goes back to the beginning statement. If you run a chainsaw or you run a pole saw, you learn you do not try to bump metal, cut metal, or anything with that because of the unknowns that can happen. All right. Now, this is the second stump. This is what I presume the 1.5 foot stump. And it's not as in precarious of, or not in such a danger as the 4-foot stump is, because there's no metal on multiple sides of the tree. There's only just this fence. Even still, given the position of it and that chain link fence is next to it, a chain link fence is metal. As you see in this photo right here, the chain link fence is actually next to the tree. If not, the tree has grown into the fence. So in order to cut that, again, you would have to run your chainsaw or pole saw through the metal, and that is a no-no. So to go back to the original question, they disputed it. What do you think? I think the tree expert is actually correct. Should not be trying to cut anything that is in contact with metal, because of the risk of when you hit that metal with that chain, who knows what may happen. The metal may shoot off and become a projectile. The chain may break off and become a projectile. The saw itself, if it hooks into that metal, saw could become a projectile, or it could pull the operator into a direction where he ends up harming himself. A number of things could happen. And like I say, if you know how to properly use a chainsaw or a pole saw or any saw that has a motor attached to it, you know there are certain things you don't do. And if you do not have a blade for or a chain for the material that you're cutting, then you don't use it for cutting that material. So for instance, if you want to cut metal, you use a metal blade. If you want to cut wood, you use a wood blade. Now there are some blades that are cross material. So you, for instance, if you have a circular saw, let's say, you can get away in some scenarios with cutting PVC with that circular saw. I don't recommend it. I have done it, but it depends on the use case, and there's also certain tactics that you can do to make sure that if you do not have the right tool for the job, that you do certain things a certain way. But in this case scenario, when it comes to a tree, and that tree is either next to a fence or some other type of metal, you don't cut that. I have trees that I've had cut on my property, and literally the tree had grown through the fence. It probably originally started off as like a twig, and over the 30-40 years or so, it grew into the fence. So it was one with the fence, and can't do anything but other than cut it down to the height of the fence, or cut it down as low as possible to the point that you're not actually cutting or risk cutting the metal that is next to it or is actually in direct contact with. Hopefully that gives you a perspective and the answer to this particular question. If you have any comments or questions regarding chainsaws and using them to cut trees, feel free to drop a comment down below. Until next time, peace out, and thank you for watching.